All right, let's see if I can improvise a little bit. Thank you for allowing me here, and thank you for being here at this time. I believe it's the right time and the right place, and I also believe it's a special time like this. Tonight, it's more of a call to action than a typical campaign speech, because I'd like to formally announce tonight that I am running. After much earnest prayer, consultation, I'm seeking your prayers, your advice, your concerns, and your support to become your voice in Senate District 1. I'm going to skip over some of this. I often tell stories about cases. You got Assistant District Attorney Kyle Jones, candidate for District Court here, and we often like the lore of the courtroom, and I often tell stories about cases with which I've been involved, especially those that had some precedent-setting significance. But tonight I want to tell you a little bit of a lighter one. Story of a civil case. A farmer was in court suing for personal injury for himself and damages, and in court the insurance company's fancy lawyer began questioning him and said, "Now, didn't you say right there at the scene of this accident, 'I'm fine'?" And the farmer responded, "Well, I'll tell you what happened. I had just loaded up Bessie, my favorite mule, in the trailer," and the lawyer jumped in and interrupted and said, "I didn't ask you for any of those details. Just answer that question. Didn't you say right there to the trooper that you were fine?" And the farmer responded, "Well, I had just got Bessie into the trailer and I was driving down the road," and the lawyer jumped up again and said, "Objection! I'm just trying to establish the fact that right there at the scene, immediately, he told the trooper when he came up that he was fine. Now here he is coming into court several months later. He's suing my client for money. I think he's a fraud and a malingerer. Make him answer my question." Well, I was kind of interested in what the farmer had to say about his mule, so I asked him to continue. He thanked me and said, "Well, I had just proceeded to load my mule, and I was driving down the highway when out of nowhere this big tractor-trailer truck ran through a stop sign and hit me right in the broadside, knocked me all the way over in a ditch. My mule was knocked into the other one. And then about that time, I was hurting bad, and I could hear old Bessie over there moaning and groaning. And then the trooper came up, and he could hear old Bessie over there moaning and groaning also. And he walked over to her, and then he pulled out his gun and he shot her right between the eyes. And then he walked back across the street and he said to me, "Mister, your mule was in pretty bad shape. I had to shoot her. Now how you doing?" Now the point of all of this is that sometimes things get taken out of context. You've heard a lot of stuff about King for a Day and things that people have taken out of context about Charlie Kirk and others. Also, it's not always what you say, but what you do. Sometimes we are absolutely intimidated. We shouldn't be, but we're intimidated to speak the truth. Corollary is sometimes you can't rely on what other people are telling you, and that includes scientists and experts and pundits and even people running for office. We have to trust what we know in our hearts, in our minds, our faith, and landmarks. Now, the great book of wisdom gives us a little bit of instruction about that. In Thessalonians 5:21, it says, "Examine everything. Examine everything carefully, but hold fast. Hold fast to that which you know is true." We're in a crucial time. Many of you know more about this than I need to elaborate on. We are so polarized that we just lost all common sense. Absolute intolerance, even though the other side used to preach that, has now taken over. We went through a period of crammed down government. Now we're in the period of shutdowns. Our very state doesn't have a budget. And again, I'll come back to this in a minute. For the first time in modern history, our state doesn't have a farm bill. We have seen an attempt to control parents' decision-making in schools and to basically remove them from having any say-so. We have witnessed 8 to 11 million immigrants that have not only been alive, but have been encouraged to cross our border illegally. And more than we have the capacity or their willingness to assimilate. We have been forced to use certain language, pronouns that didn't make any sense. They were just fancy sounding words that didn't mean anything. We have seen DEI forced down upon us, contrary to the constitutional provisions of equal protection and to the detriment of competency in many cases. Now we're righting this ship, but it's been listing so far to the port, for instance, that's to the left, as we're taking on water and sinking. But there's still a lot of water, a lot of bilge water to bail. This is a crucial time. Authors, journalists, doctors, scientists have all been ridiculed and punished for the attempt to tell the truth. Universities have had their grants removed. Justice Kavanaugh, we saw there was a plan to commit murder on him and others. And after it was all said and done, there was a lenient sentence that had no deterrent effect. It sent the wrong message. Somebody alluded to it earlier tonight. There's an election in our neighboring state. One of the candidates for Attorney General has called for and fantasized about the murder of his political opponent, as well as the minor children, and then wanted to watch the widows experience pain and would denigrate the graves of those. We have seen 2 assassination attempts on our president. And we'll get to some others in a minute. There are many cataloging of things that we've experienced and things that are wrong, and I'm going to try to skip over some of those. But I will say that capitalism, free enterprise, free speech, freedom of religion, unbiased justice system, which were once considered crowning accomplishments, bulwarks of our civilization, are now under attack. Core values have been replaced, such as truth, justice, and fairness, with similar sounding but lesser substitutes, like equity and transparency. We've experienced lawfare, attempting to determine who the candidates were. And again, at the same time that there's a government shutdown and we can't seem to garner 5 votes, U.S. government to even continue a resolution of keeping everything the way they've already voted for. Just so you know and understand that debate. Does anybody know what the deficit is? The deficit is a number 38 with 12 zeros. Now I can't even fathom that amount, but it's 2.6 trillion in just interest per day. That's our share. Each one of your share is $111,400. It's growing faster. That interest rate is growing faster than our economy. Do you know what we spend on medical care in this country? 2 times more than any other nation or country. 3 and 4 times many others, including Sweden. Our constitutional framework is under attack. Not only have there been protests at justices and legislators' homes, today they protest even their teaching at a school where Justice Kavanaugh was teaching things to undergraduate students, like the courses on the Magna Carta. There were demands and protests first to cancel it, and then they actually shut down the classes recently. And that's a case and a study of where a tyrant king, a real tyrant king, was forced to grant 63 rights to the people, including, ironically, a freedom of speech. Our constitutional framework remains the very best way to deal with all the things with which we are confronted. And we all know that our state is more deeply rooted in that constitutional history than perhaps many others. We had a constitution 10 years before the United States did. We declared independence twice, 10 years, first time being before the United States did. How many rights do we have in the North Carolina Constitution? Anybody know? I'm not going to ask Kyle because I know he knows. 36 enumerated rights. Does anybody know what? We've had 4 revisions, but do you know what the Constitution still says? Recently we heard a reporter, Heidi Pritzpa, who attacked what she called Christian nationalism, calling them dangerous because they believe that rights come and emanate from God. And she defined that as being extremist. So did Senator Kane from Virginia jump in that and ridiculed and called stupid people who would believe that. But do you know what our North Carolina Constitution still, after 4 revisions, says? We, the people of the state of North Carolina, grateful to Almighty God, the sovereign ruler of the nations, for the preservation, for our political or religious liberties, and acknowledging our dependence upon Him for the continuance of those. And it goes on to say that the source of liberty is not a king, prince, potentate, or political leader. We know where it comes from. That's one of the landmarks. My mother-in-law is here with me tonight. She's 92 years old. Woohoo! GOP, both locally and in the district. She recently drove several ladies to the mountains for a little vacation to watch the leaves change. But at 86, she was trying to solicit somebody to run against an entrenched, incumbent female Democrat that had been there for years. When she was unable to do so, what did she do? She did it herself. And she won by 2 times. But I'm going to tell you a little story about an elderly woman. After a recent, particularly turbulent flight, the pilot decided that he was going to not do his regular customary thing of going out there and greeting all the passengers as they exited. And then the little old lady come and said, "I'd just like to speak to him." So the flight attendant went and implored the pilot to come back and ask him to talk. And she said, "She's just a sweet little old lady with a cane. She just wants to ask you a question." So reluctantly, the pilot went out there, and in a very soft voice, she said, "Young man, did we land? Or did they commie bastards shoot us down?" Now, I apologize for that, but I say it because it's a point that we need to make. The point is that we've been through some very turbulent times. It may be confusing, but we must rely on what we know to be true, on our faith, on our foundations. It does seem like we're in a war, we're in a battle. Our very foundations of government, our institutions are under attack. But we cannot resort to denigrating, cussing, calling those with whom we disagree racist, Nazis. We cannot allow nor resort to violence. We must have free and open debate. So, what am I standing for? What am I running? I'm a Christian, I'm a conservative, and I have been all of my adult life involved in public service and in business. And even before judgeship, I was involved in various capacities: Chamber of Commerce, COA board, tourism board, redistricting boards, civic and community organizations. I've served as your senior resident Superior Court judge, doing administration over 7 counties. I've held court in 86 of our state's counties and served in all of the counties that comprise this Senate district. In business, practiced law, started my own law firm, which eventually grew to 11 employees before I left to go work in the state legislature with Chief of Staff of the Senate President. My younger brother and I have operated and owned 3 water sports businesses, rentals of all types: watercraft, jet skis, pontoon boats, fishing boats. We owned a Kawasaki dealership. We sold those cycles and vehicles. Early on, one of the former Republican commissioners and I, good friend Richard Johnson, formed a little partnership where we would buy a piece of land and build a house, and then we'd sell it. And we kept doing that. And finally, we ended up to where we were able to buy a bigger chunk of land and develop it and sell the houses. In that process, soon we were able to provide either rentals or the owner financing for some people to have their very first homes, some of whom are very prominent now in our society. The point is that I know what it's like to make payroll, file 941 reports, to deal with a plethora of regulations. My priorities are God, family, country, and community. I'm a lifetime resident of this district. My mother-in-law's from Currituck. My wife's family is from, or father was from Gates. We have been married 27 years, I think. And we have 2 children, 2 grandchildren. They're all at home working back in this district now. So I have skin in the game. I believe in law and order, fair application of a rule of law without favor or delay. I believe in bail, and I believe in jail. Free enterprise. I believe that's the engine that supports and provides opportunity. Economic prosperity. That's the tide that lifts all boats. Now, there are some core principles throughout this big district, but because it's vast and diverse, there's some different applications that have to be made in each of these different areas. What works in one area is not going to be the other. You've got agriculture in one place, seafood industry in the other. There's an opportunity for some jobs and in light industry or development that may come through the rail and the ports if we can find the appropriate application with that will be compatible with agriculture. Regulatory reform. I've told you about how I feel about that. It's time that we get a handle on the unnecessary job-killing regulations. Hardened structures. We're the only state in the nation that has an absolute hard, fast rule, no hardened structures. Now, I'm not talking about spending taxpayer money to protect private property. I'm just talking about get out of the way, let people do what they need to do. I support equality of life, and that means for residents that are already here, we have to offset effects of tourism in some areas. We have to have access to health care. That's an issue all over this district. In Dare County today, it's very difficult to have doctors. They're closing. One practice closed this very week. Some places in our district, they just need a fire truck. Some places need a firehouse. Some places need roads. Now, the way to do that, there is ways that we should get grants. We need to work together to get those and help that. But to sustain that long term, we need jobs. We need good jobs. and support. Immigration reform. Now everybody says, well, that's the U.S. government. Actually, the first line of response is the state. We have seen maybe 8 or 9 bills introduced into the North Carolina legislature, only 2 of which have passed so far. But if anybody's interested, I'll come back and talk about those. But the point is that some states have had a response that is to absolutely obstruct that enforcement. Our state has been willing to at least pass 2, but because of the nature of those bills and the likelihood of court interaction and the details that are going to happen, that's going to require some tweaking. So that's going to be coming back. Free and open debate. Now, we saw what started with toxic and intimidation, and now it's outright violence. At first, when people started contacting me way back in March of this year, even before I had retired, I'd said no. I think my wife was reluctant. The straw that pushed me over was when they murdered Charlie Kirk. It affected me more profoundly than I otherwise might have originally imagined. What they tried to do was not just kill a man, but to silence a movement. Not because he spoke blasphemy or treason, but because he told the truth. And he dared to stand for a conviction. And most of all, because he was successful. Those events have moved me from a place of comfortable complacency to an obedient response and advocacy. We'll end with 911 since we just recently celebrated that date. But I'm talking about Ecclesiastes 9:11. The race is not to the swift, nor the battle to the strong, nor the bread to the wise, nor riches to men of understanding, nor favor to men of skill. But time and opportunity happen to them all. It's not about perfect people. It's not about skill and wisdom, but it's about time and opportunity, being in the right place at the right time. There's a lot of examples of that in the Bible. But each time they talk about that particular combination, right time, right place, there's a word used, korah, which means to encounter, to meet at a prearranged or planned, without prearrangement or planned explanation. It means a right happening. Now there are many examples, but also a corollary is in Esther 8 and 14. The biblical heroine was implored to go out and advocate, to intercede to prevent the killing of her Jewish people after a plan was hatched by a king's cabinet official. Now she knew that doing so could likely cause her severe punishment, banishment, or even immediate death. But her cousin, the prophet, told her, if you remain silent at a time like this, you and your family will perish. This may be the reason you were put there to begin with. There is no Hebrew word for coincidence. It's not a coincidence that you are here. So, I would ask, let us make certain time and preparation, well, time and opportunity are ours. And be prepared at this right time, right place. And together I believe we can be the right voice at the right time. May God bless you.
Does anybody have any questions they want to ask?
Yeah, I think the audience in general wouldn't know the judge's position on the Second Amendment.
Okay. First off, I'm going to tell you I support the Second Amendment. all three parts of it. Again, our amendments are broken down with multiple parts. I believe that there's no difference between as far as priority between the first and the second amendment or any of the others. I will tell you though that I believe use of a gun is an act of consequence, and there should be responsibility. So we need to make sure people know the consequences of their actions. But I support the action. Yes, sir.
In more specific terms, where would, if you were elected to the state senate, okay, and the Democrats proposed an assault weapons ban, where would you stand on that?
Well, again, I'm going to look at everything. I'm going to examine carefully. I'm going to be a team player with my Republican leaders in the Senate. But I'm going to tell you, I don't understand what's meant by an assault weapon ban. It's a weapon. And there's no distinction made in our Second Amendment about what I understand to be what they're calling an assault weapon. Is it the magazine? Is it the style? I don't see that.
They don't do it.
No, you're right.
Yes, sir.
Judge, not a Second Amendment question, but I have a wife and a daughter that are both registered nurses, and healthcare is a challenge in Eastern North Carolina. You'll love this. One of my daughters is an attorney. She works for East Carolina Health now, so I guess I'm covered on both ends. It's a real challenge in the rural area. What specifically could you do in the Senate to help Eastern North Carolina? Not so much a brand new hospital, but we all know Martin General closed. That impacted Bertie, it's impacted Chowan, which would be part. What can we do?
That's a great question, and I'll tell you, I don't have all the answers. I'm willing to listen, and I'm willing to get with the people that I think can help and find those answers. But I will tell you that I have been butting my head against this issue. I served on the task force for medical care, getting access to medical care in Mania. When I grew up, we had some of the best medical care all around, because the group of businessmen would go to a doctor. We got a doctor from Walter Reed Hospital who stayed there forever, who was Eisenhower's physician. And they recruited him and just said, what do you need? And he told them, one of the clinic, and they built it. You can't do that anymore. One of the things is CONS, a certificate of need, that bumps in and gets in the way of that. And I know that the legislature is considering that, but they've considered it several times in many years. But it's time that we deal with something like that. Now, I'm not saying it's automatic. I'm saying we got to be careful how we look at that. But that's one of the first things. The second thing is, there are ways that you need, just like as I said in the old days when we needed a doctor. Healthcare is hard to get anywhere in Eastern North Carolina, including places. You would think people want to come to the Outer Banks, but it's hard to get doctors. Just had a clinic closed this week. There's some things that the legislature could do, and that is provide incentive for those people in the areas where there is that most need, instead of having this idea, well, we're going to look at it all across the board. But again, I don't have all the answers. Yes, sir.
North Carolina is like the 9th, 10th largest state in the union. It's growing rapidly. The economy is growing rapidly, and we're not really seeing the fruits of it here on the eastern side. I think you kind of touched on it when you talked about ports and rail, but what do you think you could do, or the Senate in general could do, to help the eastern portion of the state enjoy what we're seeing in the Triangle and Charlotte? I don't mean those people, but I mean that economic growth, some of that engine brought this way.
I think there are a lot. I think the first answer is, we gotta get the right people together at the right time with solutions. One person doesn't have all the solutions. Ronald Reagan said, a good leader is not somebody who has all the answers. He's the people who know somebody who has all the answers. And that's what we've got to do. Second thing is, though, I've been talking to some people who are interested and concerned and who are visionaries around the district, because each area has its own issue. And you're exactly right. Ports, rail is an untapped resource, but they're going to need some funds and some money. And so the way you get funds and money is a couple of ways in the Senate. It hasn't changed that much in 34 years, I'm told. But it's a top-down leadership. But the way you get power, for lack of a better word, is you align with other people of similar concern, and then you have some block and some power. And that's what's got to happen. And yes, you get the grants and things like that to open it up. But long term, you need to have that job to support that. There's some places, Terrell County, the people are telling me 55% of their land is not even taxable. It's owned by an exempt group. So you got to find somewhere else to start that. You got to bring something else in.
Thank you.
There, and then each of our other areas, Currituck and Dare, is going to have different issues. And the working watermen have been under siege for a while now, for maybe 10 years.
Do you stand with like the commercial fishermen and the farmers and things like that?
Yes. I support working watermen, agriculture. Yes, sir.
What's the social service system? It's abused and overwhelmed. Is there any solutions to that question?
Social services, like your local.
The abuse of, and able-bodied people and those services.
Yes, well, yeah, there's different components to that part if you're breaking it down. But if you're talking about, you know, the work requirement that's coming from the federal government, unless that's changed, that was part of the big beautiful bill. But then, you know, that's part of what's being held ransom in the U.S. government, is some of those provisions. So we don't know what it's going to be. We don't know what's going to happen in North Carolina, where we expanded some services, but there are provisions that require some work. But if you're talking about your local areas needing more resources, such as access to mental health, that's an area that's got to be addressed. And that's the same area thing that his question was.
We're concerned with more so able-bodied people.
Well, I think you're going to see. I can't predict what's going to happen, but I think North Carolina is going to resolutely set its face against that. And I think that you've already seen that's part of the big, beautiful bill if it holds. All right.
Thank you.